Hello and welcome to the 10 hours of Nürburgring, brought to you by Schwitzer Racing League, GT3 and GT4 based race. And as you can see, we are nearly halfway through. So with just over 4 hours done and just under 6 hours to go, we brought you the earlier 2 hours, didn't we? The first 2 hours to start with. It's fair to say that a little bit has changed. So, for example, now we've got Bloom, the car 999, or listed as 999, it's car the 555 Schwitzer Motorsport entrant, has taken the lead on merit, with it being ahead of Daniel Slith in the MSA Racing 414 BMW. Now, that 414 BMW had taken a nearly 30-second lead when we left the action a couple of hours ago. It's now in fifth place, having pitted one more time, but it was second when it came into the pits. You've got Pascal Vota now in the first of the Schwitzer Motorsport entries. He's now in second position. It's a net third with everything that's gone on. After leading the earlier couple of laps and starting on pole, he's had to recover because he had a big error in the first couple of laps that cost him 40 seconds. And he's obviously lost more time coming through the field with GT4s getting in the way. And we've got Barris Hoffman for the 100 Porsche entrance, the Bremse Backensprizer, easy for me to say, entrance, the Kart 100, 26 seconds off the lead. So a bit of change has happened since you were last with us. You've got Rakita now coming into the pits for the Ferrari entrant, car number 75 for Virtual Pro Racing. He had a steady, stable first stint when we were covering the first hour. Let's say that has continued in much the same vein for the Ferrari, now in fifth position, with now Schumacher in sixth place for KEK Sim Racing Team. That team has recovered somewhat from what was not a slow start, but they were sort of, towards 9th, 10th, 11th place in the running. They're now up to 6th, and 6th on merit, it must be said. I see Brunert in the NRW Performance sharing that car with a couple of other drivers who will go through shortly with you. We'll re-catch you up on that. Now, that car was battling for the lead, did indeed take the lead very briefly at the end of first hour. Unfortunately, the second hour proved to be a difficult one. They lost a whole lap due to various mistakes, partly pace and then a couple of mistakes as well. The conditions catching out Brunert, especially in that second hour. We've now got the Lamaxo Esports, the second entrant car, it's listed as 33, but it is in fact car 591. That was towards the back. It's now recovered somewhat with Vickery in the Apex GT McLaren with 6 stops to go in 9th place. Another one to have hit a little bit of strife in the time that we've been away. Prestige Worldwide Racing, still in the top 10, still lapping fairly consistently, but not really a factor in the lead, with then a couple of others who have hit strife along the way, rounding out the top 14, and indeed the 14 GT3 entries left. Now, we've got 10 GT4 entries left. There was 11 at the start of the race, so we'll work out who we've lost. The leader, the Velocity Racing Team, C998, the car number 998, Mercedes GT4 entrance. The Spanish entry as well had been battling with Schwitzer Motorsports Mercedes entry. That appears to have hit a little bit of strife as we work our way through. Indeed, you've got Hartmann now in fourth place, having made the same number of stops, but as you can see, a lap behind. So something's gone wrong there for the German outfit. In the meantime, the second of the Schwitzer Motorsport entries in GT4, that's currently piloted by Christoph Fetzer in the Chevrolet Camaro. That's doing just nicely, thank you very much. It's nearly a lap, well, we're saying probably over a minute and a half behind, but it is in second place, albeit with one stop extra to do over its rivals. Before then, it gets a little bit spaced out with Kramer, who had a drive-through penalty right at the start of the race, putting them on the back foot with the NRW Performance. McLaren hitting a little bit of issues with them. The Scuderia 5 Racing Porsche Cayman, currently piloted by Milizia, but we'll see if that changes going forwards. They're now in fifth in class with Loyek, who has stopped one extra side compared to the rest. in sixth. Now that car, the Gridline Motorsport entrance, that was in third position, looked a strong third going forward. So again, further issues there that have afflicted the team in the 2 hours that we've been away, with Nussi in the Effect Motorsport Aston Martin yellow and green also dropping back from what was fifth in class to now seventh in class. Before you get now to a couple of cars, the WGA Racing Aston Martin outfit a further 6 laps behind the position, or the next position, with Durr in Gridline Motorsport. That car has been beset with problems, especially connectivity. And then Vakoviak in the Jamaica Connection Evil Racing, just coming across the line now, a whole 11 laps off of the next position. So a bit of a difficult one for those to keep going, a bit of a challenge for those to keep motivated. But we've got over half the race left. A lot of things can happen, and so it's important to keep your head and keep in it. It can be very difficult if you're one of the drivers whose race has been badly affected before you've even got in, getting in the car and trying to at least fathom some form of motivation, try and see if you can gain maybe a place. But anything can happen, and in motor racing, especially endurance racing, it usually does. Trying to see if we can track the gaps, proving a little bit more difficult now. We've got Hoffman now going into the final sector. Hopefully we can see that. Yes, so he's a whole lap behind Pascal Wouter. We'll see maybe as they cross the line what that gap actually looks like, as opposed to being a lap behind. With Bloom in the Porsche, in the Schwitzer Motorsport, the second entry Porsche, leading the way. Yeah, Hoffman a good 26 seconds off of the back of Wouter. We'll see again now what Wouter's position is compared to the Porsche out front, with the Porsche just now coming to finish, I think, sector 2, and then you've got the Mustang, I think, he's just going to finish sector 1. So we'll start to see an idea of how these gaps are looking. You've got Slith in fourth in the what was formerly the lead entrant for BMW, the MSA Racing 414 entry, 16.9 seconds off the pace. They've stopped one more time compared to the rest, so it's important to take that into consideration. They're running at least a net second, possibly still challenging that portion now. So as we can see, hopefully with Wouter, it's difficult to track the gaps at the moment, so we're going to have to try and guess and see exactly what we can work out and estimate it to be about 40 seconds. We'll only really find out when Wouter crosses the start-finish line. Hopefully the lead Porsche does not get to the Dunlop hairpin. I think he will, so it's going to be a bit of a difficult square to circle, but we will try, as Hoffman has already taken a second off. There's still GT4s to navigate, so it's not as if those who are spaced out will be stuck for anything to do. There's still cars from other classes to navigate, whether that's GT4 and you're allowing GT3 cars to come through, or whether it's a GT3 and you're trying to manage the traffic with GT4s. So we can see here now that Hoffman now is, it was 25.5 seconds. Ah, yes, Wouter, no, 48.4 seconds. We'll have to look at that periodically and see how that's going down, as Hoffman now officially listed as a lap down. I'm sure it's going to be nowhere near that by the time they do eventually cross the line, with Wouter now just going into turn 2. So as we take stock here, and there'll be more and more things that we find out with a couple of the entrants in the top 5 having stopped 4 times. So you can see the numbers there in the amber blocks. That's how many times they have left to pit. There's a mandatory 9 pit stops in this race, effectively 1 every hour until the end. Drivers and teams can choose to do that exactly how they wish. Some may wish to fill the car up with fuel and run it and run it and run it until the end, and then take a little bit more fuel and tyres. Some may prefer to simply keep it so that they can do roughly an hour each stint, change the tyres and have a little bit more consistency. We won't know what the best strategy is truly until they all, converge in the last half an hour, and that is really what makes endurance racing so good, especially with a team championship such as this, because with no regulations, there is no way of knowing who's chosen the right way. And so it does add an element of thought process for not just one driver, not just 2, often teams of 3, 4 drivers, as we see Hoffman now. He's gained a couple of tenths on Wouter, so nothing really to write home about at this moment in time. As we see teams and drivers who will discuss this all the way through. They'll all be in their parties, they'll all be in their little sort of areas where they can just communicate with each other, and they will be communicating all the time. There'll be at least 2 drivers within that party who'll be talking to each other. They'll be checking where things are on the track, and one of them will be watching either this stream, the English stream, or there is a German stream, which, this being a largely German championship, is likely to take precedence if they want to try and find out what's going on and try and feed that information back to their drivers. Schwitzer dropping a second off of the back of Daniel Blum, who's really, really quick in the Porsche, officially the 999, but the 555 Schwitzer Motorsport Porsche. So he's setting an impressive pace, and I suspect trying to extend their lead over Silf and Parnabianco, who has now taken over the 75 Ferrari from Ricciardo that we saw at the top of the stream. So, as we see now, we can see at least the top 8. Well, 8th place Vickery is 2 laps behind 7th. Now I can see as well that car 777 is only just, I think he's just ahead of, we'll just see this now, I think he's a lap down. That car lost a lap a little bit earlier on, so they're at least talking a lap down there. And then you've got Leon Schumacher, who has taken over that car just as we switch to him. He goes wide and off the track. So the commentator returns once again. Just going to take a look here and see quickly. So the top 4 cars, 5 possibly with the Ferrari, 6 with Schumacher, are on the lead lap. That's we can see that 119 laps have been completed. I would suggest, looking at it, it's probably the top 5. Try and see if we can see where Schumacher is compared to Bloom. Bloom now going into the first, so yeah, 121 laps completed for Bloom, and Parnabianco, obviously with that extra pit stop, is just off the back of that. So we see the first 4 cars currently on the lead lap, with the 5th car of Parnabianco effectively just fighting to stay onto that once pit stops equalise themselves out. Now, let's see if we can see. Now you've got Schumacher, it says officially 2 laps behind. It's ACC doing ACC things. You've got Grunert in the NRW Performance Ferrari 777, having, as I said earlier, struggled somewhat to get on with the wet conditions during his first stint. So we can see now you've got Vickery there, alongside Phantom and Goat in the McLaren in 8th position. They're a couple of laps behind now, with Rust and Knights further back. Van der Beek in the Hispania Racer team, that car has hit further problems since we last streamed, with Hooper, who's had connectivity issues that cost them 3 or 4 laps, with O'Reilly, Balson and Garona really fighting a losing battle just to get into the top 10. That's still possible for them, at least with the cars that are ahead of them. The prodigious pace that car has shown. Bowman, Stewart, Whiteman and Jacobsen in the 13th BMW, so 102. Again, now you're looking sort of 4 laps behind. The vast majority of the GT3s, to be fair to them, have stayed within 4 or 5 laps, so kudos to them for that, because it means they're all keeping going. Then you've got a bit of a class of their own with Garcia in GT4. We'll get back to the racing very shortly, with Garcia and Hernandez in that Spanish entry for Velocity Racing Team C998, the Mercedes AMG GT4, ahead of Hartmann, Irish, Sherman, Sven Sherman in Stefan Sherman, the third of those, driver alongside Hartmann and Irish. There at the moment officially showing us a lap behind, but that's the lead battle to look out for a little bit later on, with Kopsch, Vesta and Nehring making up the top 3 in that Chevrolet Camaro, now that they've all pitted, with the exception of Garcia and Hernandez, who have got 1 fewer stop to make. It really has been a dominant display from the Spanish Velocity Racing Team GT4 entries. We can see here now it's saying, when it says 9 laps, it doesn't mean 9 laps off of the car in front. So, okay, we can see now that means they're 9 laps down in total, a lap behind, for example, the Hall team WGA Racing at Motorsports, just as an example, 109 laps done. That's not then 9 laps off of the next car. So that's good to see that the vast majority of these drivers have kept going, even down to Jamaica Connecting Racing, who are struggling now 2 laps behind everybody else. We're going to leave the timing screen alone for just a moment, and we're going to go back to the racing now, as we can see the gaps aren't really updating, so I'm going to try and see if I can pick a bit of action here. I think most I've got is that's car 414 with Sylph here at the wheel currently for the BMW MSA Racing entry. He's got, I think, a couple of laps down. I think that's who put the stablemate, the teammate really, in that Mustang. I think that's stuck behind them. So we can see now, 414 and 415 Team MSA running together. So not much to report there. Now, where else can we see? Hopefully a bit of action. That's, I think, going to see us for R55, and it's not showing who that is, so we'll have to guess as to who that is. Got Van der Beek behind in the Hispania Racing team, and Rust, who can see the car that's behind him. He's a lap down, so that's again not much to write home right there. With Vickery now in the pits, coming in from 7th place, that you'll expect that Apex GT may retain that 7th, or at the very least drop down to 8th, with Rust at the wheel of the first of the Lamaxo Esports. Okay, so Schumacher now up to 5th position. Are we missing a driver by any chance? Let's see, because Brunner was running in 7th. I'm just going to go back. Yeah, we are. We've had a disconnection since we've come back in. Okay, so let's work backwards to see who that might well have been, which team that might well have been. No chance of finding that out just yet. I think it's definitely one of the leaders, so a bit of drama. That's the Italian team, isn't it? It is the Italian. I think it was car 41, car 41. I can't remember the team name. I'll go back to them very shortly. But there has been pretty major dropout. We'll just try and see if we can get that information now for you. There has been a dropout, and it is, I think, the Italian crew of. If we can see now the team name and number, I think I've gone right down to the bottom. That may well have been. We can see that is away from the notes now. We've got, I think it's Trapaglioli and Co. I think it's car 41 has dropped out. So that is horrendous news. They were looking good potentially for a podium finish, but that has potentially gone, with a couple of laps gone, no doubt, as the Italians try to work their way back into the team, back into the lobby. The Velocity team are out currently, having disconnected from 5th position, and that means that KEK Sim Racing team, with the car 16 entrant with Leon Schumacher and the McLaren, inherits 5th position. It's been a steady rise really for them, isn't it? They've not done anything spectacular, but they've kept going and avoided issues where others have not managed to avoid them. So kudos to the German outfit there for hanging on in there, and at the moment they're going to net themselves, if it stays like this, we approach halfway, a rather excellent top 5 finish. Still a long way to go, with Gruner now only 19.4 seconds behind the NRW performance. That's car recovering from dramas earlier in the day. And then up to 7th, you can see Rust and 8th Phantom now, as we wait for the Velocity team to come back into the fold. We hope they do, because they've still got a lot to race for now. We've got a bit of GT4 on GT3 action. You've got the Lexus as well of the Logistical Nightmare Racing, the South African entrant, with Bailey still at the wheel there. Drops towards the back in 13th in class. That'll be 14th when and if the Velocity team come back into the lobby. What can we see now? That's Brunner in 6th position. Currently, like I say, just 20 seconds off the back. That's going to be the closest thing that we've got to the lead at this moment in time, or closest thing that we've got to a battle. We've got Vuta off the back of Sylph, and Sylph off the back of Hoffman, but they're all quite spaced out at the moment. I think at the moment it's a case of just keep your car in, keep yourself interested in the race without necessarily breaking the car and breaking your chances. So lots to ponder them for the Leeds GT3 teams, with I think that's Daniel Blum still setting a prodigious pace at the top, with Hoffman giving chase in the 100 Bremsbackenspreiser entrant. Easy for me to say, that'll catch me out all race, I'm sure. As we can see now, the gaps fluctuated just a little bit there, 16.5 seconds, but 23 now for Pascal Wehrle as he gets his way through some GT4 cars. You can see there the scale of the problem. That's a couple of GT3 lapped cars there that we can see not necessarily impeding him just yet, but could prove to be a bit of an issue should he not be able to clear them. Blue flags will be flying, and unlike the GT4s, they will be obliged to get out of the way, so it shouldn't cause too many issues. But it is all noise and all distraction that I'm sure Pascal Wehrle could do without. Okay, so one thing I want to talk about now is, in terms of strategy, is if you're one of the cars, if you're, say, 22 seconds back, as Schwitzer is with Sills, or if you're 18 seconds back with Gruner off the back of Schumacher, what do? Do you stick to your strategy, or do you think that you might need to change a couple of things to potentially get yourself ahead? We've still got 5.5 hours of racing still to go, effectively, or just over 5.5 hours of racing with 5 hours and 36 showing. So do you change, do you go off course, or are you going to say, no, this is the strategy that we've chosen for better or for worse, because it works out with your driver stint times? Now, the drivers will be talking, each and every one, to their to their teammates. So you've got a weird situation where in regular GT3 racing, in endurance racing that you see in real life, for example, you've got a team and a load of engineers who are finding that out and who are just making that decision. With this, it is simply the drivers. So the drivers now have to talk to their team, to keep communicating with their team, to talk about track conditions. It's going to be wet all the way through, I would suggest, with the wind as low as it has been, and with the rain as consistent as it has been. It's not really changed this velocity or this consistency for a long, long time. But there is still a decent dry-ish line coming through, or certainly a less wet line coming through, so that the drivers can at least maintain a consistent temperature. So do you maybe even change your tyres? Do you short fill your car, maybe get one of your pit stops out of the way, and then maybe fuel slightly longer when you change your tyres, say from the knowledge that you can go a little bit further, and then maybe if you want to risk it and gamble, you might want to just either come in and short fill, maybe get yourself out, get a cheap pit stop out of the way. Or do you save your cheap pit stops for the latter part of the race? You'll have a couple of driver swaps to fit in as well, so when you're changing your tyres, maybe putting in a bit of extra fuel, that's when the or the driver changes may come in. It's a lot to ponder for these guys, and it's something that a situation I've been in myself before, where we have made strategy changes on the fly. And one time it really did well. We gained 3 or 4 positions. We then tried it at the same time, or in the same situation, a couple of races later, and it did not work at all. We lost 2 or 3 places. So there's a lot riding on the decisions that they make, and it might then lead you to maybe go with on the hour, every hour, as a couple of drivers have done. But you can see with just over half of the race to go, there's 2 drivers, for example, right at the top end, 4 if you count cars P5 and P6, with Gruner now coming into the pits to perhaps illustrate that he's heard me, with 2/3 of their mandated pit stops to go. So you're going to see some short filling, and so this order that you've got here as Pascal Wehrle does go past. I think that's Van der Beek in the Hispania Racing Ferrari. They're a couple of laps apart, so that won't need to take too much longer. There's a lot really that will shake out in the last couple of laps, last couple of hours, where drivers start to work out exactly what the strategy is going to be. The strategy then starts to play out. Any last minute changes then come to the fore, because they can be very fluid. These strategies. So I wouldn't necessarily bet on the order staying as is. We certainly didn't think it would when the BMW was nearly half a minute ahead with Silth. And whilst he's doing a grand job in terms of catching Hoffman, that's now 16.2 seconds. He's not really doing enough at the moment to catch Bloom, who's setting a ridiculous pace out front. Really consistent from the German there in what has been a car that's stealthily got its way to the front after being a little bit further back early in the first couple of hours. And it's now just trying to see if we can find at least half a battle. All the drivers have rather unhealthily spaced themselves out, and the only cars that are close to each other at this moment in time are GT3s and GT4s when they converge. So we're now, at the moment, all of this is speculating in terms of speculating the results, trying to see who's on what strategy, speculating in terms of pace, in terms of tyre condition, because a lot of these variables can come in and really alter the look so that things are not what they see. You've got now here, for example, Daniel Bloom, 127 laps into this race. He's stroking his way, all looks very calm at the moment, stroking his way around the final corner. But he's got a nearly full minute lead at the moment on Hoffman in the second Porsche, the 100 entry Porsche. So it's showing him as officially a lap down. We'll try and see if we can get there. No, he isn't. He's just going to the full curve now. So hopefully we can get a bit of a time there as he gets to... No, it just says he's one lap and then he goes away again. So we'll hopefully be able to bring you a little bit more in terms of that. But the pace that the Porsche was setting out front, making that very difficult indeed. Hopefully we can get some comments. Hopefully we can get at least a bit more information to see from some drivers to see who's where and how the positions are looking in terms of gaps, but Daniel Silth, for example, is taking 2 seconds out of Hoffman. It's taken 2 seconds out of Hoffman just then. Now, we didn't see whether there was any GT3 or GT4 involvement there. I would suggest possibly not, but that gap is coming down even further now. More GT4 action for the BMW to pass as well, so we'll keep an eye on this just for the moment as Hoffman now goes into the final sector. Again, officially showing as a lap down. I'm sure that's not the case. As we hopefully try and see if we can get... No, he's going to come into the pit lane. Okay, so Hoffman now comes into the pits, and that means that Bloom, with the gap that he's got, now when he does come back in, should then come out into the lead. Now Hoffman comes into the pits, and he will hand over. You would assume there's another BMW coming in as well. That's not Silth. That is, I think, the BMW of... Is it Silth? No, it must be. It's Stewart in the BW Motorsports N24 GT3 entry. That car having been beset by problems earlier in the race when it had pace that was a lot better than the result that it's currently getting. So we still haven't had the Italian Velocity team come back in. I wonder if that's their race done, because it's been a good 10 minutes since they disconnected from what was 4th place. You've got Silth having gone through already in second place, so you're expecting Hoffman to come out, or the 100 Porsche to come out in 4th position as Pascal Wutter goes up into 3rd for Schwitzer Motorsport in the Mustang, the car 444 entry. Again, having had a few problems early on, recovered really well, and still an outside bet, I would suggest, for victory here, with Bloom having not yet pitted and only being about 30 seconds off the lead. 30 seconds in endurance racing with 5.5 hours to go is nothing. So expect that all to converge potentially a little bit later on. As I say, that is 32.9 seconds behind Hoffman, so that'll tell me the actual gap is going to show slightly differently a little bit later on, as we've got Hoffman now. Okay, so that's ACC doing ACC things. So Hoffman's come out in 4th, isn't he, once this all shakes out. And then Wutter is currently in 3rd. As we see there, yeah, so Silth has gone through, and Wutter 25 seconds behind Daniel Silth when this all works out. The MSA Racing BMW, who we saw a lot of earlier on, but in the first hour when Ilkay Erkinçoglu, the lead driver, was fighting all before him or all behind him to keep hold of that first place. It's not yet worked with Carlos having driven away in the second stint. And then in the intermittent period between the streams, between the broadcasts that we've had, losing out from there. We'll endeavour to try and find out exactly what's gone on as Silth's ping starts playing up a little bit more. As you can see, I think the whole lobby's ping started to change just a little bit, so we'll keep an eye on that for you. Now, we can see it is Vuta now still going into the final corner. Takes a slightly wider line in that Mustang. I suppose if you can make the corner slightly wider, you can lengthen the straight a little bit, and the straight is where the Ford traditionally does well. 24.9 seconds now off still, so much of a muchness in terms of pace, but just waited to see when the Porsche might come into pit, and hopefully then it gives us a really good idea of the gaps as is. I think car 100 now, Maniveld, who is over a lap behind, it says it will be 1 lap behind. They potentially are out of contention now, being in third position, 24.6 seconds behind Vuta. So you're talking about a minute off of Silth. So okay, so maybe not at the moment. That's not a lot of time to get back, potentially in 5.5 hours. So potentially there could be a battle. And it's really now about not necessarily worrying where you are. If you're a driver in the car at the moment, it's just a case of making sure that you maximise your stint times and making sure that you don't leave any time on the table. Doesn't necessarily matter where you are in the race at this moment in time. If you know that you're roughly there or thereabouts, that's all that matters. At the moment, the time to attack is not now. It's coming now onto the back of, I think that's Knight, the Prestige Worldwide Racing BMW, blue and green with some white trim there. He pulls nicely out of the way. Does he? No, he doesn't quite. He's just moved to the right-hand side. Is he going to get out of the way here? He's under blue flags, and he does. Expertly gets out of the way. Doesn't cost the Porsche Maniveld too much time, as we can see now that Leon Schumacher is in the pits. This will tell us his true position with Maserati now. Jörg Maserati, who has threatened to lead the race earlier on today, didn't he, for NRW Performance Ferrari. He's now in 6th position currently, although he is now possibly going to advance into 5th place, depending on how quickly Schumacher gets out. I would suggest that Schumacher's got enough time at the moment, with him being at least halfway through a 30-second stop, as he is now leaving the pits. That case, though, it won't be a loss of position, but certainly Maserati in that Ferrari has enough about him to get after the McLaren of Schumacher. Schumacher now leaving the pits. A little bit of damage there, not yet fixed, so that car still handling rather well in amongst all of that. And here comes Maserati now. So how far are we going to see? We'll not know really until they get to the Dunlop hairpin. So watch this space on that. Pascal Fusa still 24 seconds thereabouts behind Silth, with Maniveld again 25 seconds off of the back of that. So everything at the moment fairly spaced out and fairly evenly matched. Just waiting for the lead Porsche to come in so that we can see roughly where the pace is all at. 131 laps in, I remind you. 5 hours and 25 minutes into the race. Okay, so now we're keeping on board for the moment. Actually, we're going to move to Jörg Maserati in the Ferrari, the 777 entry NRW Performance. And he's only 13 seconds off of the back of Schumacher in the KEK Sim Racing McLaren entry, currently in 5th position. Now, Maserati's pace was incredible to begin with earlier on. The first hour, he was really fighting up there in the lead. Circumstances have robbed him of the chance to be doing that at the moment. But it will be interesting to see if this Ferrari can do something about the McLaren. We see now as he comes out of the final corner. And let's see here. What's 13.8? It's now 13 seconds. Okay, so 8 tenths of a second in the final sector, and I cannot see traffic interruptions too much. I can see that there's a GT3 in the way, but not a GT4, and certainly no GT4s for the moment. We can see now that's the Ferrari, I think, of Van der Beek and the Hispania Racing team. Yep, that car in ninth position in GT3 and ninth overall as a result. Not exactly getting out of the way. We'll see if there's any blue flags about. There should be. As he goes through the Ford curve. Is he going? No, and you never really know with that corner. That's to hook it into the second apex, then effectively fire off the banking that you get right at the inside there. Schumacher not doing an awful lot to try and lap him, so perhaps Van der Beek at the moment has that pace advantage over Schumacher, even if Schumacher is currently in fifth. We've got Maserati now, who's just going down into the Dunlop hairpin, and that is 10 seconds, so something's happened with Schumacher. That's 3 seconds lost just in the first sector. I would have envisaged that this gap won't stay very big for very long, with Maserati now having taken 4 seconds out of Schumacher for various reasons over the preceding lap. So let's stay with this, because Maserati, I remind you, fighting for the lead earlier on, is now the man to watch in the top 5 battle. So we've got now coming through, I think, the Schumacher S's. It's kind of a lap ahead of Russ behind, so there's no threat from behind. But coming through the Schumacher S's, this is where we see, because Schumacher, they have caught a couple of GT3s now. Schumacher now going through the final corner, and Maserati 9.4 seconds, so a further half a second off the gap there for Maserati. And I suspect that this battle then won't be long in coming. We'll come back to it shortly, because Hartmann is second. No, he's a second behind the BMW, so no need to worry there. We'll see exactly how the BMW is doing with Garcia. Now, well, he's going into the Dunlop curve, isn't he? Dunlop hairpin, and that is, I would envisage, about a minute clear of Hartmann and Vat, to be honest with you. So Hartmann in a solid second place for Schwitzer Motorsport, and about 10 seconds ahead of Stefan Kops in the fellow Schwitzer entry in the Chevrolet Camaro. That car, a difficult car to drive in the wet, and indeed a difficult GT4 car to drive. And see, giving it everything, isn't he? 10 seconds off of his German stablemate there. Hartmann now entrusted with the reins in the Mercedes entrant there. So Kopsch 9.9 seconds. That might be something to watch. They'll go cleanly, and it won't be too aggressive, because they're both part of the same team. So we'll see how that develops. We're going to go back now to Maserati, 6.9 seconds off the back of Schumacher. So Schumacher now, having lost a bit of time to the GT4s and lost a little bit of time to the non-compliant Ferrari, I think it's fair to say, with Van der Beek now having made one more stop, so with one fewer regulation stops to make, 5 hours to go. So that Ferrari, they might be using the longevity of that Ferrari to good effect. It's great on fuel and great on tyres. So despite being a lap behind some of its competitors, I suspect that Van der Beek and the Hispania Racing Nexus junior team won't be done yet when it comes to overtaking. There might be P9, but I suspect that P5, P6 is on the cards now. 5.3 seconds behind for Maserati. Expertly deals with the traffic there. That's the McLaren entrant, I think, of Tom Boyer, but I'll be going back and making absolutely sure of that. As car number 5, no, it's car 213. Car 213, the Schneider, Stefan Schneider, I think, with Jamaica Connection Evil Racing. Easy for me to read from that far. But yeah, towards the back in GT4, ably getting out of the way, and there's another one to add to that particular list. 5.1 seconds now. So we're going to stay with Maserati for a little while, just to see how he catches up. Now, looking at the track map now, no interferences for a little while between these two. 5th and 6th, a lap down behind the ever-impressive Bloom for Schwitzer Motorsport. Though, the caveat to that is that there is one more stop for that car to make than its peers. So, Maserati now currently 5 seconds behind. We'll find a live update to the gap just at the end of this straight, now going into the Dunlop curve. And it is now 4.3. So whoever said that the positions in endurance racing were set from early on, they are lying, because 4.3 seconds is all it is between Leon Schumacher and Jörg Maserat. And we've only got 5 hours left of a 10-hour race, so certainly plenty of time for this to right itself. Schumacher now not looking all that comfortable since they came back out of the pits. That McLaren does look a little bit beaten up, so I wonder if they may use one of their mandated pit stops to come in and fix some damage and add a little bit of fuel. Schumacher now very vulnerable in that McLaren. He's done an excellent job so far, as has the rest of the team. As we can see, look at the rejoin there from the Lexus. I think that's gotten in the way. No, it hasn't gotten in the way of Maserat, so he has brought his brain a little bit there. But the South African Umbele, I think that is, in the Lexus, having spun off at the chicane, nearly causing an accident, but eventually seeing sense there. 4.1 seconds now for Maserat. I do wonder if that was a bit of an obstacle, as the Lexus, who has finally got back going again, tried and failed to rejoin straight away. So I do wonder how much of an obstacle that was, but all is fair and all is safe now. Car number 23 is back safely going, so we can see now that is Daniel Bloom again a lap ahead of and a pit stop behind most of those. So again, we can see when how that shakes out. When that shakes out, as he locks up a little bit, runs slightly wide at the forker, but that won't cause too many issues. With Silth now in second place, balled a bit by the GT4 entry. That might be 110. That is Richard for Gridline Motorsport. Not really making it easy, nor does he have to, for the GT3 runner. So Silth there getting balled just a little bit there, with Vota having only really taken a second off in the last sort of half an hour that we've been covering, 23.5 seconds, as Manafeld pits for Brembach and Schwitzer. That is the 100 entry, the blue and orange Porsche, so they're getting a pit stop ahead. That is currently 5 to go. That'll be 4 by the time he leaves the pits, with Schumacher now 3 seconds ahead, a position behind, 3 seconds ahead of Jörg Maserat. Jörg Maserat, it's not 3 seconds, is it? That is not 3 seconds. That is more like 1 second. So a little bit of drama there for Schumacher. Somewhere around that second sector, the McLaren driver has found some strife, and he's going to be in for some more bother here now, as Maserat stalking like a shark going into the final chicane. He's not going to make the move there. He's too far back, but he is only half a second behind. This could be when and not if, as he goes down the inside into the final corner. Schumacher gives him room, and I think that's wise, because Maserat coming through like a steam train passes Schumacher for 5th position, and the Ferrari, the 777 NRW Performance Ferrari, is off and into the top 5 once more. He's got about 2 minutes to make up on the car in front, but that's a problem for another hour, as Schumacher drops back to 6th. Self-preservation, the name of the game for the German, as it has been all evening long, all day long. And now we wait, because Manafeld in 4th place currently. That may well be 4th by the time, or that may well be 6th by the time he leaves the pit lane, with Maserat now going into the next sector. We'll see shortly what's happening there, as Vota and Silth have passed their way through. I think now it's Maserat who will take 4th, with Schumacher remaining 5th just for the moment. Car number 33 isn't going to challenge them just yet. I can't quite see exactly where they are. Maybe they're another one of ACC's new entrants. No, they're not. So that is going to be... And Manafeld has been in there for a little while. Maserat's now in 4th and Schumacher in 5th. Manafeld has been there over a minute, hasn't he? I wonder if there's a more terminal problem with that car. Maybe there's a driver swap issue, because that doesn't appear to be going anywhere fast. He's in danger now of losing 7th and 8th to Rust. Well, 8th maybe not to Phantom at the moment, but Rust in the first of the Lamaxo cars. He is currently lapping... Well, he's currently... He's going to pass him, isn't he? Would have thought, unless that Porsche gets going immediately, he's going to pass him. So that is potentially a disastrous pit stop here for Brembach and Schwitzer, who have been for so long in the top 4, and it could all be about to go wrong. With having run and pitted from the top 3, we're now in a position where they are looking to be out of the top 6 if it stays like this. Maserati now is coming back for another go, so something is pretty terminal within that car, isn't he? He's sixth position at the moment, but he's dropping like a stone and not going anywhere. Little Schumacher, meanwhile, a good 3 seconds behind Maserati. So again, it shows that he was justified in letting him go with no fuss or bother. The McLaren driver, again, driving a mature race. The whole team have driven a mature race. There's a little bit of damage on there, so look after the car and make sure it gets you to the end. Silt, meanwhile, has been blocked by more and more traffic with Stefan Dahmer. No, he hasn't. Stefan Dahmer has come into the pits and has emerged, apparently, half a minute ahead. So Dahmer now going through the final corner, and Silt is just coming up. That's the wrong car, isn't it? That's 415. 414, meanwhile, they're about half a minute behind, aren't they? So that Schwitzer Motorsport entry has been in and out of the pit lane and is now in a commanding position at this moment in time. Half a minute in the lead, and we'll see now whether that influences the strategy going forwards, with Silt now a good 20 seconds ahead of Futa, and Maserati now getting no bother from behind. So this is a fairly set top 4 unless there's further issues. Manifeld is now back out into the race, but he's lost over a lap and a half compared to where he was before. And that's David Manifeld's worst nightmare, the whole team's worst nightmare. Car number 100, the orange, black and blue with some black trim on there, has gone from the top 3 to 7th place, and that is pretty irrecoverable from this position onwards. Russ now up into 6th position. Lamaxo, who had such a torrid start to the evening, to the afternoon, back into the top 6 and looking to make good on what was early promise shown yesterday. Got a couple of GT4s in the way, but that won't bother him. Schumacher, meanwhile, has stabilised the gap somewhat to Maserati, but I don't think it'll matter too much. Yeah, 4.3 that time round. Only a second lost with Silt now. This is the race that we've got to watch. How far is Silt behind Dahmer? Because Dahmer, having come back out into the lead, having taken over from Brew, has got a lot of pressure on his shoulders to keep going. It's 31.7 seconds. It's catchable. It's catchable if you're the BMW driver. You've got to make sure that you don't make any mistakes. But if he gets his skates on, that's not bad at all. You can see now, I was just saying that 31 seconds isn't a bad gap to catch up. Well, Law's 30 seconds, so a second already gone for Silt, as we can see now. Whether or not the Porsche has the pace, the 555.999 Porsche, depending on whether you can see it or whether you're looking at the leaderboard, is under a little bit of pressure. Now, it's a funny thing to say, 5 hours to go, with 5 hours to go and a half a minute lead, but if you can see, if you're the second driver and you're just chipping away, the psychology's there. In the firstly it was 31, then it's 30, next lap it's 29. We'll see if that plays out, but there is a little bit of a psychological edge to be had, even if you're the car in second, as he's 30 seconds still behind. So this gap is certainly not growing. I know he's going through some GT4s, but it all plays on your mind, even when you're in a commanding position. That's the beauty of endurance racing. I think we can see a GT4 car going off in the background there, but I think he's got back on. That's car 213, who I think is the McLaren. I think it's the Jamaican connection. It is the Jamaican connection McLaren. Circling still, but in last place, I think in 10th in the GT4 class. There is still some GT3s behind a couple of GT4s. Behind the GT4, that is the 102 BMW, who have made a few more pit stops, it's got to be said, and is now come back through the field, but has had quite a few troubles, that car. So with 3 pit stops to go, probably looking to stretch it 80 minutes, they're probably going to end up making too many pit stops, because the fuel consumption in the BMW is not great, and nor is the tyre consumption. So I suspect that they may be a stop extra, which is far from ideal, even if they were in the race proper. At the moment, they're just circulating around and just keeping going, with not much hope really of catching up. They might catch the South African Lexus team, but they've got 2 more stops, regulation stops to make, with Bailey now leaving the pit lane, I think, to complete one of those pit stops. We'll just see, because it's just coming to the pits. Yep, he's just leaving now. I say car 23. It says 469 there. So apologies if you do. Apologies if you do see car 23, but can't see him on the map. It's a pain for me too, I promise. So you've got Maserati now has built a lead over Leon Schumacher in 5th place of 13 seconds. That's in GT3. At the moment, so 4th and 5th now separating, the gap expanding by the lap. Going to have a look at the top end of GT4. It's Garcia in the Velocity team. It's just taken over Fernandez, and that Spanish team working very well indeed. 5 pit stops to make, and way clear of Hartmann, where they've got 6 pit stops to make. And I would estimate about a minute behind. We can see now Garcia, more than that, isn't it? It's nearly a lap. That car has been metronomic, hasn't it? The Velocity Racing team. And so a heavy, heavy favourite, even at this early stage, for the victory in GT4. But you have got a little bit of a battle here now, haven't you? Between, I think it's 2 Schwitzers, isn't it? It's Hartmann and Kopsch. 8 seconds apart, so, okay, doesn't sound like a battle at the moment. That's certainly one to watch for going into the second half of the race, of which we're approaching now with only 5 hours and 6 minutes to go. It's the one that probably could get interesting out of it. So we still don't know quite the order of play in GT3, with Dharma, Sylph, Vuta and Maserati all within the same lap of one another, and obviously different drivers, different teams go at different speeds and have different pace, but it's difficult to see exactly how that works out. Sylph has not quite gained. It's gained a half a second recently, so Stefan Dahmer has saved or kept the gap just a little bit, and has started to stabilise it, with Vuta now 21.9 behind. I wouldn't count him out. I know they're 50 seconds off the lead, but it can all change with that car having been on pole position, having been the quickest in qualifying, having only really been that far back because of bad luck. It's just about how quickly they can catch back up now, with 5 hours and 5 minutes to go. There's a lot of time and a lot of laps and a lot of time for things to go wrong. So they'll hope that they've had their bad luck. You've got Dharma, who hasn't had any bad luck yet, and Neil is the wider Schwitzer Motorsport team, certainly the second entry in that Porsche car 555, as you can see on your screen now. They haven't had that much bad luck. 414, the MSA BMW racing entry, that has had a little bit of strife somewhere around the track, because it was leading by nearly a minute when we left the action a little bit earlier on. So still in second place and still all to play for, especially, as I say, if they can keep chipping away at the advantage they've got ahead, as they have done, nearly 2 seconds since the Porsche emerged from the pit lane. Now, I think Schumacher has, I know he's gained a second, I think that's largely GT4 involvement there that's responsible for that, going through the Ford curve. Yeah, he's just coming up to a couple of GT4s himself, with 777 Jörg Maserati, who has long since taken off, isn't he, going through the Schumacher S's. It's not the best of TV camera angles, is it? It sort of goes under and over. You can never really get that and never really follow where they're all going. Heaven forbid there might be an issue going through there. So Lead at the moment, 30.6 seconds, 141 laps in. So you're going to be looking at the thick end of 290, 285 laps by the time this finishes with the track as it is. And it is still all to play for. Schwitzer again, now getting under 21 seconds behind. So again, I mentioned the psychological thing. If Sills can chip away at Dharma's race, but if Schwitzer can chip away at Sills' advantage, then again, that psychological factor comes in. If you take a second off, then another, then it can get into the driver's head, even if they are a little while away, because you look up at the clock and 5 hours seems a lot longer. Maserat now, again, showing us a lap behind. That doesn't matter so much. Just got to wait for him to get to the next sector. Car 777 now. As he goes through the first corner. I think he's off the lead lap. I think it is just the three that you see there, Dharma, Silth and Schwitzer at the moment on the lead lap. But a battle for the lead we potentially have going into the second half of the race now. 5 hours and 2 minutes to go, and I think we're in for a treat. I certainly don't think this is going to peter out into a damp squib. You normally do get a couple of endurance races where you can see the winner, but there's action further back. I think we're going to get the best of both worlds here, in that there's going to be a scenario in which you do not know the way that this is going to go until well into the last hour, and that's something that you can join us here for. I think that'll be at 11:30 to 1:30 Central European time, which is the Germans among you and the Italians and the Spanish who are also competing in this. But in England, that'll be between 10:30 and 12:30. There is also German commentary, which I think has been posted in the relevant discourse, so we can get perspectives from both sides, from different sides and different perspectives going through now. As Maserat still, he's just finishing the second sector, isn't he? So we're going to see roughly how much he's got to go. Yeah, he's just a lap off. So Schwitzer now 20.3 seconds back from Sills. Now that could be pretty key, because Sills hasn't made much more of an impact since we last spoke about it, which may well be commentators' curse once again, but he hasn't made many inroads into Dharma's advantage. Now, that's no slight on Sills, because Dharma is a very quick pedaler, but Schwitzer is also a quick pedaler, and that gap is reducing bit by bit, ever so slightly. Now, that may well be in the thinking of the BMW driver. Yeah, 30.6 seconds of the gap stabilised, but he can't really afford for it to be too much in his thinking, because then he starts to get distracted now as Schwitzer now goes into the Dunlop curve. So we'll find out exactly what the gap is now. That's 19.98. It's just, again, 0.3 every sector here and there, starting to come down. So Schwitzer in the Ford Mustang, proving that car, despite the changes to limit its power, still packs a punch around here. We are now halfway into the race. Thank you very much to the spotter for doing some maths for us. 4 hours and 59 minutes to go, plus the last lap, obviously, which may well be, just as they come across the line for 3 or 4 seconds ticking down, it may well be that the driver tries to continue. May well not be, but certainly doesn't mean that we're going to be bob on 10 hours, that's for sure. It goes through now past the McLaren GT4 car, makes it easy enough without compromising their race too much. Well done to all involved. And now we can see, as he goes into the final corner, exactly how much time he's gaining per lap. Pascal Schwitzer in the Schwitzer Motorsports Ford Mustang, and it is 20 seconds, and he had a bit of GT4 involvement, didn't he? So we'll give him the benefit of the doubt. Still 31 seconds off the pace, starting to lose back that time that he gained on Stefan Dahmer a little earlier in the piece. We'll just quickly take a break as we're an hour into this stint. I'll be right with you in a couple of moments. Okay, so some movement here with Silth coming into the pit lane now. Bob on, almost 5 hours to go to get rid of another one of those pit stops. 4 minutes into, or 4 pit stops in, sorry, as he's now starting to leave. And has he handed over? We'll find out a little bit later on. Vuetta, meanwhile, goes into second place. I think Maserati now stays in fourth. We'll find out exactly how that shakes out a little bit later on. But all change. Well, not all change. It's change for second place at this moment in time as Silth, the BMW, comes into the pits. So, what can we see here? Yeah, he's got Schumacher in 5th position just behind him. I think they're still a lap down. And this is what I mean about strategies in terms of how they play out, because it wasn't that long ago at all that Dharma came into the pits for his 3rd stop, for his 4th stop, sorry. And all of a sudden now for the 5th stop, probably about 15-20 minutes later, that's when Silth comes in. So really it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out, because the Porsche might have a few issues with tyres maybe a little bit later on, but it might only have to do a couple of short fills. I suspect with the BMW being as thirsty as it is, won't be helping matters. And that is being handed over, Daniel Silth, to Ilkay Erkelin-Choglu, the star of the first hour, fighting all that came behind him in pursuit of the early race lead. Erkelin-Choglu now, rather than the hunted, is the hunter. And it's now about how much time he can take out of Dharma in the Porsche, and also how much time he can, extend that gap between himself and Pascal Vuetta. And I say extend the gap because it was 20 seconds before the BMW of Erkelin-Choglu came in. So we'll see now a driver who's got prodigious speed, I suspect, is going to potentially shake the order up just a little bit. Dharma, now having completed 145 laps, is just going through, where is he? He's just going through the final sector, so almost an entire lap ahead of Erkelin-Choglu. Erkelin-Choglu now coming across the line, 46.8 seconds behind Vuetta, and this, with Vuetta still yet to complete the first sector, is where we're going to be able to see the times and see exactly what the pace is. So hold on here whilst we try and work a few things out. Maserati in 4th position, a lap behind, so I think the top 3, barring any issues and barring dramas, is set in stone for the moment. With Jörg Schumacher now 26 seconds off the back of Maserati. I think Jörg Maserati has cemented that Ferrari's top 4 status just for the moment now, feeding his way through the Dunlop curve. Still a solid run for the KEK sim racing team, McLaren entrant. Like I say, they've not been the quickest. They certainly weren't the quickest in qualifying, starting towards the back, but they've just kept going in a way that other drivers, for one reason or another, haven't kept going. We've lost velocity to issues, I think, with their connectivity. I think that's pretty much done and dusted. We've had issues for Banefeld and the Brems Brackenschweizer Porsche entry, car 100. That was leading for so long in second before a disastrously long pit stop hampered their progress, and now 2 or 3 laps down going into Dunlop curve, and that is looking like race over. We've heard Hupert in the MSA Racing Mustang. That's also hit strife earlier in the race, with Stewart as well in the 102 BW Motorsports N24 entry, also having connectivity issues as well. So a little bit of bad luck. In fact, as soon as I go on there, we've got some pings. I'll probably come away from them before I do any further damage. But a little bit of issues for those drivers, but you have to be there to take advantage of them. Now, this is Donovan Leyer in the logistical nightmare Sniper Racing Lexus, in 12th overall, with a couple of with 5 pit stops left to make. You've got, I find this tactic weird from Van der Beek and Hispania Racing Lexus, because there's 2 pit stops for them to make over the course of 5 hours nearly of racing. Now, the reason that doesn't make sense is that Ferrari won't go 2.5 hours into a race before it needs to stop. So they're effectively sentencing themselves, unless they've had some issues with connectivity or damage or with the car itself, they've effectively sentenced themselves to an extra pit stop, because the Ferrari might get 5 hours done on 3 stops, but it won't do it on 2 stops. So I know they've got a little bit further to go in this, so it just seems to me that this is a bit of a risk. And they may well have practiced it, but it seems to me that this is a bit of a risk. I'm prepared to be wrong, but in 11th place with only 2 stops to make, well, cars around you, tracking at 4 and 5 to go, it just seems to me to be a bridge too far. We shall find out as we can finally start to see half an hour into the distance, the rain beginning to ease off now. This will be a test for the drivers. It's been wet and consistently wet throughout the last 5 hours. Little bit of a curveball being thrown in by the weather conditions with half an hour into the future, in terms of if that starts to ease off dramatically, and we'll keep an eye on this, whether that means that some drivers may be able to come in for dry tyres, and quite how that will shake the order up. At the moment, it's still status quo, with Stefan Dahmer in the 555 Porsche leading the way in GT3. Pascal Wutter is a good way back. I think he's looks like about a minute behind off of the top of my head and off of the way in which the track's laid out. And Erkelin now, we're going to see exactly how far he is. It was 48 seconds, it's now 45.4. So the gap starting to come down. Erkelin now starting to lock in. So we can see now, with the gap that we really want to see, if we can, is between Wutter and Dahmer. Difficult because of where the drivers both are, with Wutter having gone through the first sector beam and Dahmer now coming across the line. It's going to be a bit of a challenge, but we'll try and see if we can get it so that they're in at least the same sector. Not going to be easy, but let's see if we can at least try and keep a track of that. As Erkelin now goes past the GT4 Aston of the, I think that's 009, isn't it? 009 car. Whom it isn't shown, but I think that's the WGA Racing. It is. Well done to them for getting out of the way. And we'll go back up now to Erkelin to try and see if we can piece together exactly what his pace is versus the 2 in front. Wutter now, we nearly had it. We nearly had it there. As he just completed sector 2, it's shown as a lap, but we nearly had the time as to quite how far back he is. That's the key gap for working out this race as it is. If we can find out what the gap is between Wutter, 46.2 seconds. Okay, so 46.2 seconds. That'll be something that we need to keep an eye on now, with Stefan Dahmer having completed 148 laps. We're going to need to see if we can keep an eye on that going forward. 46.2, remember that. Erkelin now is going to cross the line shortly, hopefully reveal what the gap is there. There's a car off, I think that's Stein in the Aston Martin. He's got back going again, the GT4 entry, who is 7th in class at this moment in time, and going along nicely, but having a little bit of trouble there. Now we can see Erkelin who's going to come across the line now. This is going to tell us exactly what his pace is and exactly how much under threat the 2 in front are. 45.4 seconds. So just coming down, isn't it? Erkelin it's just about coming down. Might need to find a little bit more time to threaten, because the 10th here and there, as that lap was, isn't going to cut the mustard. But we might just have a race on for the lead now. Dahmer still lapping steadily. We're going to try and see if we can find Wutter again. Wutter halfway through the second sector, isn't he? He's got to go through the Schumacher S's and then up the hill before we see what that time is. Dahmer, meanwhile, has just crossed the line. Okay, so we might get a representative time. I suspect that it's going to stay around that 46 seconds, wasn't it? Okay, so Wutter now going up the straight. We're going to get to the second sector beam, and hopefully this will start to tell us. It might have to be that we're very quick here. Wutter now goes through, and what does it say? It just says a lap. It just says a lap. Of course it does. Give it the big build-up. Let's see what we can see now across the start-finish line. Hopefully I've got something to build up for you guys. Thank you for joining us as ever for this stream. It doesn't go unnoticed, the support. So Wutter now 45.4. Okay, so it's coming down. That's down by 8/10 that last time around. So Pascal Wutter taking nearly a second a lap out of Dahmer. So if they keep that up, they'll be on them with a couple of hours to go. The race will ebb and flow, but we've got potential for a lead battle a little bit later on. Dharma in the Porsche isn't as safe as he could be. Erkelin Choglu now we wait for to see exactly what his pace is. He comes into the final chicane, showing us a lap. That's just ACC doing ACC things. Try and see if we can find a time here, because what was it? It was 45 seconds across the line. Car looking a little bit difficult to drive, but they've sorted the pressures out, I do believe. And that is 46.2. Okay, so not taking any time out of the Mustang, but starting as well to inch into the lead of Dharma, because that was only half a second gone, and Dharma a full 8/10 slower than Vuta. Vuta now 45 seconds flat behind, so that gap's coming down. And I think this could be a very exciting finish. The pole sitter had an awful start to the race, if you remember, going off on lap one. In the early first 5 minutes, effectively lap one, isn't it, in a race as long as this, going off in the first 5 minutes, finding his way 40 seconds off the lead, I remind you. Had he not had that moment, they would be right there with Dharma in that Porsche, because he had to fight his way through not just as backmarking GT3 cars, but also the GT4 cars, not obliged to get out of the way, as we keep saying. And now we've got a race on our hands, because Vuta, driving angrily in that Ford Mustang, is starting to inch into that lead, isn't he? Inching into the lead of Stefan Dharma. We'll see what it is across the line now, because Dharma hasn't completed the first sector. He's come up across some traffic at the Ford curve, and it's 45 seconds. Okay, so not a huge amount of time there. It's ebbing and flowing a little bit. That's 0.4 of a second gone to Vuta there. So something to keep an eye on for the next 45 minutes before we tip out once again, and I think this could get quite exciting. Speaking of a gap of 40 seconds, look at the gap that has been pulled out by Jürg Maserant. The Ferrari might not be in contention to win at this moment in time, but fourth place looking very much secure. For 41 seconds, we saw him pass it over an hour ago, Leon Schumacher in the McLaren, and he's extended that gap quite significantly over the previous hour since passing him. Schumacher keeping it slow and steady and staying in fifth position as a result, not risking the car, but outright pace looks to be fifth, with Rust and Manifeld struggling behind, and Goat a lap further back. So we've got Erkelin Choglu, Vuta and Dharma fighting for this race win. We're just going to take a look at the gaps and try and see if we can find out a little bit more, with Erkelin Choglu now over the back of Palacios, I think, in the BMW. The BMW gets out of the way very nicely indeed. Got to make sure he doesn't run into the back of him. All very friendly there. Misses the apex a little bit, Erkelin Choglu. Meanwhile, the gap under 45 seconds out front. That is Pascal Vuta. Pascal Vuta has been chipping away at this, hasn't he, with Dharma? It was 48 and 46 seconds. We're now just dipped under the 45 second mark. 151 laps into this now, so a good portion. Certainly got enough for a sample size in terms of pace, haven't we, with 4 hours 42 minutes to go out of this 10-hour race. And I would wager that Vuta isn't done there yet. The Mustang really looks like he's done. He means business going through the Ford curve. 47 seconds clear of Erkelin Choglu. So Erkelin Choglu having a pretty poor lap by his usually lofty standards. I think he's just getting stuck in a little bit of traffic, isn't he? Car 414 now, as we can see, yeah, he's got the 55 car, obviously the BMW. Then there's a little bit of GT4. I think that's GT4 leader. That's Garcia. So Garcia won't be playing any silly games. A lap ahead of the field. Who's that in the pits? I think that's car 213. That is Schneider in the pits for the Jamaica Connection Evil Racing team. They're 10 laps down off the lead. They're last in GT4 of those still running. But kudos and credit to those for still running. They've got 3 pit stops to make, whereas the rest of their sort of competitors, really, Richard and Hall, have 5. So could be some action towards the back of GT4 there. Now we've got Stewart's finally got past the GT4 car, so he's back into his sphere, and so we can see exactly what the gaps are. I say we can see exactly what the gaps are for GT4. We can't, because Garcia is running away with it. He's over, well, he's about a minute clear, isn't he? He's got two fewer stops to make than Kopsch and 1 fewer than Schweerman in the Schwitzer Motorsport duo for the Camaro and the Mercedes. And it's a bit of a cakewalk for the Velocity Racing team, isn't it? The Spanish racing team. So certainly that looks like, barring any issues, they've got that wrapped up. What isn't wrapped up is the lead for GT3. So Vuta now, try to see if we can get an accurate representative time. That won't be for a little while, but we can see how Erkin Choglu is doing. Showing us the lap, that's ACC, just doing silly things there, as you would expect. They've got past Garcia, haven't they, going around this lap. So again, no silly games played by the leader of GT4, but the leader of GT4 doing very well indeed to not affect his own race. So blue flags waving. Erkin Choglu 48 seconds back, so the BMW then not a factor at the moment for anything higher than a podium spot, although a lot can change. He's got 1 fewer pit stop to make, so there is that to bear in mind, that maybe is slightly heavier compared to Vuta and Dharma. Now, go back to Vuta. When is Vuta going to cross the beam? Not for a little while, I don't think, but we'll certainly stay with him for the final half of the lap before he goes into the Schumacher S's. And we can see, how's that Mustang looking? It's looking pretty decent, isn't it? It's looking certainly very planted, the Ford Mustang, in the hands of Pascal Vuta. Now, we can hopefully see if there's been any change in the gap between Dharma in the lead and Vuta in second place. Vuta now breaking the second sector and showing us a lap, but we'll stay with it because we'll see the gap shortly. Clambers over the curve a little bit. He won't like that inside the cockpit. The Mustang, not the easiest on curbs. You can just see the Mustang trim there. It's looking very lovely, isn't it? The slightly darker silver, but enough of the aesthetics chat. 43.5 seconds, so we're under the 44-second mark now, and it's a second here and there. That will feed back to the driver, Dharma, whether he likes it or not. He'll see that if he's got the running order up, he'll see that. Won't see if it's just the next few cars, because it'll be filled with GT4s and other lap traffic, but he'll know certainly that he is losing a little bit of time to Vuta, and at that point then it becomes interesting, because Vuta, who's driving for Schwitzer Motorsport, same as Dharma, those are the two to watch out for. They'll know that they'll be getting updates from the driver to say he's a second quicker here, and if he's told them not to say that, because you don't want to hear that constantly, will they not be aware? But then you'll see it on the circuit map, you'll see it in the timings when you're sort of flicking through, that time is coming down, and it is again another 2/10 in the first sector for Vuta. So this is starting to get a little bit interesting, isn't it? Dharma now leading, just trying to get through some GT4s for good measure. So that's Nussi going off in the Aston Martin. And that might actually be the... Is that Kevin Stein of Effect Motorsport? It is Kevin Stein of the Effect Motorsport, with Nussi having previously piloted that car, the yellow and green Aston Martin, which is currently running a very strong 6th, isn't it? It's like 6th or 7th. It's 7th in GT4, letting another GT3 car go, and then staying largely out of trouble. Sensible driving there from the Aston. We can now go back to Erkin Choglu, who's going to finish his Shortly as he knows he's going into the Dunlop curve, so we'll leave that be for the moment. Here is Pascal Vuta going past the Cayman of Astorina. Scuderia 5, they've recovered just a little bit, haven't they? They were towards the back, but they are now in 5th in class, so a bit of a recovery from Scuderia 5, and that's why you keep going in GT4. 43.2 seconds, and not losing any time despite getting through the GT4 cars is only viewed as a positive. So, Pascal Vuta, are you going to try and redeem yourself for the early race shenanigans? Are you going to be able to redeem yourself and maybe still take the win? Bit of a long shot, even at 4.5 hours to go when you're 43 seconds behind, but he's certainly going about it the right way. Not losing an awful lot of time to that particular Aston either, so managing the traffic rather well indeed. As we now see whether or not there's anything further back. I think Maserat's now got Schumacher covered. I think it's fair to say they're about a minute apart, aren't they? With Maserat now going through the first sector and Schumacher, it's not quite a minute, but it's not far off, is it? Because Schumacher's now only going through the final chicane. That, I remind you, earlier this hour was a battle, but it's a battle comprehensively won by Jörg Maserat. Stefan Dahmer, meanwhile, is the hunted. At the moment, he's hunting a lapped McLaren. That might be, I think that's Rust, is it? Yeah, Rust in 6th position. So that's the Lamaxo that has recovered I think we lost the first Lamaxo entry a little bit earlier on to technical issues, didn't we? So it is the recovery Lamaxo who's done a rather good job in terms of getting out of the way. So Dahmer goes past, and now we go back to Vuta. Vuta in the Ford Mustang. We'll certainly see in the next half a minute, where they're at. They've got the 102 BMW of Stewart. That's way out of contention now to contend with, but beyond that, pretty clear with the GT4 easy meet down the street. And I think Vuta's decided to ruin my fun, because with 4.5 laps to go, he's coming for his 5th pit stop, or the team's 5th pit stop. And so, what was being caught now is a little bit of no man's land. So I suspect that he'll be coming out behind Erkelin-Çoglu, because Erkelin-Çoglu, obviously, with the 414 team strategy, as we'll cycle back out into the lead. It's about 50 seconds between them, so I don't think they'll be too far back. But having just missed his marks, it's not what you want to do when you're trying to chase down the leader. That gives Dahmer just a little bit of a psychological breathing space, with Erkelin-Çoglu now the main man. And while we've got a small break in play with the Ford Mustang in the pits and Erkelin-Çoglu going through a bit of a false 39 seconds back, we'll take a quick break and be back with you very shortly. Welcome back to our coverage of the 10 hours at the ring, brought to you by Schwitzer Racing League. And we can see here that the Schwitzer Motorsports #1 entry, so car 444, listed as 64 despite all of that. Jonas Gertz has taken over from Pascal Vutas. So Jonas Gertz 21 seconds behind İlkay Erkelinçoğlu in the BMW. Now we just need to see exactly how close the BMW is to Stefan Dahmer. Dahmer still with, or the Schwitzer Motorsports, the second entry, still with a bit of time to make up in terms of pit stops. So they've got 5 pit stops to make. The others in the top 2 have 4, with Jörg Maserat in 4th with 5 to go. So Schumacher has pitted since, so is roughly a lap now behind. In fact, he is a whole lap behind Maserat. So that looks like fourth place rather settled there, barring any issues for the moment. We're now watching the Schwitzer Motorsport Port lead car with Dharma now getting up the hill, going into the final chicane, the NGK chicane, with Erklin Çoglu in second position. Just trying to work out how far back he is as we go through. Is that car 414 now? So you're almost best off trying to work out now as the lead driver, which is Stefan Dahmer, comes across the line. So he's come across the line now. What would you say? Probably about 1 minute and 30, I would say, clear of Erklin Çoglu. It's difficult to make absolute sense of it because of ACC's timing issues, but we've got 20.4 seconds for Gertz or behind to Gertz for Schwitzer Motorsport, and about a minute and a half between Dharma and Erklin Çoglu. Dharma now surely thinking about making that fifth pit stop to get them back on track, because they've got 4.5 hours to make 5 pit stops. So do you sprint, or do you take a couple of fuel splash and goes, so to speak, in order to try and take some short pit stops a little bit later on? That's something that they'll be working out. But at the moment, Dharma behind on the pit stop score, even if he's about a minute and a half clear of the field. Erklin Çoglu now coming up against a couple of GT4 drivers. Meanwhile, in GT4, what have we got? We've got a pretty commanding lead, I think it's fair to say, for Velocity Racing Team. That is Jose Garcia in the Mercedes car 998 with Fernandez, the other driver there. And it's a pairing that has worked really, really well. They're a lap clear of Neyring now, who's taken over the Schwitzer Motorsport Chevrolet Camaro car 505. They're a lap clear of Neyring and further clear of Stefan Schürmann in the 404, second of the Schwitzer Motorsport GT4 entries, car 404. And you would have to say that with them having to make at least one fewer stop, they're the clear favourites, aren't they, the Mercedes? So certainly a very well-oiled machine, aren't they? On course to have a relatively trouble-free end to the race. You've got Breuer behind in full for NRW Performance. That car slowly making its way back after a difficult start in the McLaren car number 5. 44.3 seconds behind Sherman, so that's something to potentially watch out for the final podium spot. Although, as I say that, the McLaren misbehaving its way through the first corner. Astorino behind in the Porsche Cayman. Speaking of misbehaving, they're getting very tail happy going into the fourth chicane. He is almost a lap behind Breuer, with Flessner for Grid 9 Motorsport unable to be selected at this moment in time. We can't quite find car 222, but apparently he is out there. So you've got Stein then in 7th for Effect Motorsport in the GT4 Aston, ahead of the, I think that is Sherman in the 404 GT4 Mercedes. So Stein is running in about 7th place, isn't he? Off through there. And then you've got again, that car doomed before it start, really. We've got a drive-through penalty. It's for the driver in 13th, who's 9 laps down in GT3. So it doesn't really matter, as Stewart will have to come into the pits and serve a drive-through penalty to really add to that team's woes. They are 3 laps behind the next car, with Donovan Leyer in the South African entered logistical nightmare racing Lexus currently ahead. Beyond that, then, it's a bit of a battle for the top 10 with Garona, Palacios and Van der Beek. Also, well, they're on different strategies, aren't they? Van der Beek's a little bit further back, but he's got 3 fewer stops to make than the car in 9th, which is Garona for the Ford MSA 415 entry. And then it's Ile Palacios in the BMW 11 at the moment. Under threat, not only from the leader at the moment, but also track limits as he skates his way across the grass. A little bit of rally crossing there in the rain at the Nürburgring, but no harm done. He's got Van der Beek still behind. And he's 50 seconds off Garona, but with 1 fewer stop to make, so you expect that to close up. As we go back now to the lead car, well, Gertz at the moment, he's not quite the lead car, he's 3rd. in the Ford Mustang, but he's 20 seconds behind Erkel Choglu, who we still think is about 1.5 minutes off of the lead now. With 20 minutes to go of this stint, we'll take you through. The rain's starting to ease up with in the next half an hour, although it's going to take a lot more easing up to get this track into a slightly different condition as the Lexus there goes off out of the way of Erkel Choglu in the BMW. So just trying to work out exactly where Bats might be. At the moment, we're looking for Manafel potentially behind Rust. So Rust for Lamaxo Esports, the second entry, which has had a bit of a torrid start but has recovered well to 6th place. And it's Manafel to that really awful pit stop, didn't he, at the start of the second part of this broadcast. It was, 1.5 laps he lost, stuck in the pits for whatever reason, for Bremsch, Brackenspeiser. So turn what was, a potential podium, potentially a win, into the position you see now. It was at least 1.5, 2 laps they lost, and that Porsche now in trouble, really, of maybe even not getting a top 8 finish with Garona and Goat in close attendance. I think Garona he'll be safe on, but Goat certainly has got one fewer stop to make, and it's going along very nicely indeed. So, we've been disconnected from the server. I just wonder if that might be technical issues that have afflicted the race. So, where are we going from here? See if we can get back in and see if we can try and make sense of it all. It's looking sunny at the moment, but it was damp, so I wonder if the servers... No, it's just myself. Okay, we've had the server break. So... hold on, folks, whilst we try and work out what's going on here, and we'll be back with you just a little bit later on. So, red flag has been listed, and further instructions will come from Popolski. We'll take you into those. Popolski, one of the Schwitzer Racing admins, will take you through what that means in just a moment. We're just staying tuned for the announcement. So, radio silence at this moment in time, just whilst we try and work out what's going on. As we did have, as you can see there, Stefan Dahmer apparently 3 laps ahead of the next car as all the cars and all the drivers try to get back in. A lot of it's got to be the lead driver too, so there could end up being a bit of a swapperoo and a switch around in terms of positions. You've got obviously some drivers listed with having 9 stops to make. That won't work, so they'll have to change that, and I suspect set it all from the previous, probably from 4.5 hours ago. Probably split it in half. About the only thing I can see that they'd do. But at this moment in time, further instructions to be awaited whilst the admins discuss what they want to do. We'll leave that there for the moment, and we'll be back shortly.